Hi, I wanted to share with you something really important about setting boundaries. So, boundaries is often something that we can struggle with, certainly in partner relationships, it may be with family, with friends, in work situations. Generally, it's something that often we find really difficult and we have to work at it and we have to learn how to set boundaries. And this is often something that people will ask, how do I do that? How do I learn to set boundaries? So there are definite ways that you can physically set a boundary. There are things that you can say, and very often it comes down to literally just stating, that's not okay for me, or it might be that we used to do something and we don't want to do it anymore. So, very often people might get roped into making cakes for school bake sales or something, and we always do it, and it's just assumed that we'll be the one that always does it, and actually we're just completely overwhelmed, we can't do it anymore, but we find it really difficult to say no. And so we're like, how do I tell them, how do I set that boundary? Now actually what I've been taught through my coaching practice is literally you state your boundary and you say, I know in the past I've done this, now I'm not able to do that, or I'm not willing to do that. And then we can be helpful and say, but let's sit down together and have a think about who might be the best person to do that, and I can help you get somebody else in place. So we're not completely just leaving people in the lurch, but we are looking after ourselves and our well-being and saying this doesn't work for me anymore. And again, we might not want somebody to smoke in the house, maybe when they visit us. And so that's the boundary. So we say, I don't have smoking in my house. If you would like to smoke, you'll need to do that outside, but you can't do it in the house. And so if you continue to smoke in the house, I'm just going to have to ask you to leave and I won't be able to invite you anymore. And so actually how we set a boundary, and obviously just a couple of small day-to-day examples, it's really simple, and so often what we struggle with is not the words to say, but it's feeling safe to set a boundary and feeling that we are worthy of being able to have our own needs met. So again, working with coaching clients, if people say, oh, I don't know how to set this boundary, I don't know what to say. And so we may say, well, think about, or imagine if you were confident, what might you say then? Or, well, imagine somebody that is comfortable with setting boundaries, how might they do it? And generally, we know, we can come up with something. So it's not the language that we struggle with. It's the feeling safe, which again comes back to our nervous system. It probably is going to put us into that, fight or flight, not feeling safe, what's going to happen. And this, depending on the situation, but it probably with something like a bake sale or asking someone not to smoke in the house or whatever it is, it's probably not going to be a life or death situation. That fight or flight response isn't needed really. But what's triggered is particularly, if we're kind of people pleasers and we just want everyone to like us, we don't want people to be upset with us because that doesn't feel safe, because then maybe we're a bad person, or maybe they won't talk to us and we lose that connection. Whatever is driving that fear, it's coming from that place. And so it can be really difficult to feel safe to set a boundary. So how we learn to do that is through all of the other work that is on this platform. And so it's not necessarily an overnight thing, but it's about really learning to connect deeply with ourselves. And particularly, I talk about this concept of, our higher self. I like to call it our soul sister, but this deeper divine part of ourselves who is always worthy and who is powerful and who can protect us. And from that place, we can find the strength to set boundaries. And knowing that we have a right. So we are as worthy of, as any other human being. We have a right to have our needs met, the same as anybody else. And so it's through that process of learning to look after ourselves, to self-care, to move towards loving ourselves, and just self-preservation as well. Learning that it's okay to look after ourselves and that it's safe to do that and that we're not a bad person for doing that. And so then when we set a boundary, we feel it, we embody it, we feel it in our bones. So it's a very definite line, and boundaries are always for us. They're not to control what other people do. They're about protecting ourselves. So they're always for us. They're our line. So it's about really feeling it and really, really being sure. So when we state our boundary, it's not up for negotiation, and we can absolutely do that with love and compassion. But we mean it, and so people know that we mean it. I've talked to people before, you know, an example that with my now 7-year-old, so it's still the same, but and particularly when he was younger, he might I don't know, maybe he'd ask if he could have an ice cream, and maybe he's already had sweets earlier in the day, and I'd be like, oh, I don't think it's a good idea. I thought, oh, please, Mama. Oh, I'm not sure. Oh, I don't think it's a good idea. No, I don't think you should. And they'll be like, oh, please, Mama, please. I'm like, oh, well, okay. So my whole demeanour and my language and my tone and my body was like, yeah, there's probably a little bit of wiggle room here. There are other times when he will ask something and I'm like, absolutely not. No, don't ask me again. No, and even my body, I'm like, no, absolutely not. And he knows, and he might then sulk and go off, but because he knows there's no wiggle room here, this is definite. And it's because I know there's no part of me that isn't sure. And so it's about that. It's about showing up and from the inside out, loving ourselves enough to look after ourselves, to protect ourselves, and to say, actually, my needs are as important as yours. And so I'm going to state what my needs are. Now, we can't then control what that other person does with that. So, for example, if it's somebody who is toxic, who's abusive, narcissistic, they're probably not going to care that we're setting our boundaries. In fact, their whole purpose in life is to stamp all over our boundaries, you know, and they know what they're doing. So there's no part of them that is like, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't realise that, you know, this wasn't okay. They know it isn't okay. They're pushing boundaries all the time. So in cases like that, it's about managing our own expectations of what outcomes do we want from setting the boundary. You know, is there something we can do? Because also we have to have a consequence, and we have to be prepared to follow through on that consequence, because otherwise it's pointless. So all of it is about really connecting to this deep place of our own truth and our own authenticity, so that when we state the boundaries, people know that we mean it. Now, there might be people in life who aren't toxic, and because we have always been people pleasing, we found it hard to say no, they just don't realise that that's how we feel. And so when we can connect with, actually, how am I feeling? I think this isn't okay for me anymore. And then we can communicate that to them. And if they're a safe person, they might be disappointed, you know, but hopefully in those situations, they would say, oh, I'm really sorry. Okay, no problem. That's fine. Let's find a way forward. Now, actually, the more that we do that, and that we have people who are safe, who then mirror back to us, it's perfectly okay for you to set boundaries. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. Nobody's going to leave you. It's safe for you to do that. It lets our nervous system know, okay, I can do this. This is okay. And so it helps to build up our resilience and our ability to do that more and more. And it becomes a practice. And so over time, this idea of just authentically embodying our own self-belief about our, you know, our rights and our ability to say no, we just do it a little bit more effortlessly, which doesn't mean that sometimes it's not difficult, but we can find it easier to do. And one of the final things that I wanted to share with you, I saw Brené Brown interviewed some years ago now, actually, but this always stayed with me. So she writes a lot about compassion and about vulnerability and about shame, and based on research. And she was talking in an interview about what people who were the most compassionate had in common. So they were looking at these incredibly compassionate people and trying to find, okay, what's the common thread here? What what links them all, what do they have in common? And they thought, you know, maybe it would be faith. It wasn't that. Maybe they were just like really, you know, kind of goody two shoes and, you know, kind of over giving. It wasn't that. And they kept searching the data and trying to work out what is it? What's the common denominator with all of these people who were so compassionate. And what she found was that they were the most boundaried. So the people who were the most compassionate had the strongest boundaries. And the reason for that was because they extended that compassion to themselves. Now, when I left my ex, I started going to my local Buddhist centre and learning about meditation, about mindfulness, and compassion is a huge part of Buddhist teaching. And the first thing that you learn is about having compassion for yourself, because it's this idea of you have to truly feel it and embody it for yourself before you can really know what it's like to be able to expand that out to other people. And so again, this really links back with all of the tools that you have here about connecting back to yourself, connecting your mind and body, developing some sense of spiritual practice, whatever that means for you. It might be, you know, connecting to God. It might be connecting to your higher self. It might be getting really interested in quantum physics and learning about energy and, you know, energy in the universe. It might be connecting to your ancestors and all of the amazing women who came before you. It might be being out in nature and just looking at the vastness of the sky or the ocean. But whatever it is, connecting to something outside of yourself, really connecting to that sense of your own divine power and your worthiness, and then learning to tune into how do I feel, so that we notice, actually, I'm not feeling okay with this conversation or this person's behaviour. This is triggering me, and noticing that in our bodies and our nervous system, and then feeling empowered to do something about that. So that's how we set boundaries. So I would encourage you to continue to use all of the resources on the platform, really get to know yourself and trust yourself, and know that it's okay. You, as much as anybody else, deserves your love and affection, and to look after your own well-being. And it's okay to say no sometimes. It's okay to put boundaries in place. So I'll leave you with that thought, and if you want to talk about this further, please come into the community forum and have a chat with us. Let us know if you have any boundaries you're struggling to set at the moment. Let us know if you're further down this process, and actually if you're finding it easier now, and any advice you have for other people. All right, take care. Bye bye.